America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running talk show on computers and technology. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am your host, Ben Crossman. I hope you are all having a wonderful day as we get things kicked off here and we get everything settled. Sorry about this, folks. We do have to make a quick phone call. And perfect. Yeah, hi. And we'll be talking to Mr. Ted Pollak here in just a moment. So everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. And sorry, things are a little weird over here, but we're getting them worked out. So before we get to our interview with the Jon Peddie research, and they do a lot of great research over there, and we're going to be talking video games. Before we get to that, though, we have a few things to mention, including computeramerica.com. And that is the most important thing because it will have a link to our guest website. It will have a link to any articles that we do a little bit later. I will say that later on in the show, time permitting, we will be going over the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 launch. Just happened here about, 2 or 3 hours ago. And yeah, it's a pretty big deal. So we'll be talking about that. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out the podcast section so you can hear audio, video archives, things like that, and a contest, which we will be giving away a prize this Friday to one of our lucky listeners. To how to enter and all that good stuff, computeramerica.com. So with no further delaying, I think we're going to just jump into our interview here. And you heard him there a little bit earlier. He is Mr. Ted Pollak with the Jon Peddie Research website. And yeah, so Ted, thank you for joining us. And sorry about all the hubbub there.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on the show.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So like I was saying, this is very happy to talk games. We dedicate every 1 day a month to video games. This is not it, but hey, we love talking about video games in general, and not just individual games, but the industry. And that seems to be what you do over there. So, for a little bit of background, could you give us some background on Jon Peddie and the research that they do, and your background? Where do you come from?
Sure. So JPR is a technical-oriented management consulting and market research firm with an expertise on graphics technology and everything that wagon wheels out from the, John likes to say everything that wagon wheels out from the pixel. So if you imagine the pixel on a computer screen, what is important what are the most important uses of the pixel? And it's, content creation software. We have analysts that follow content creation software. That includes stuff like Photoshop and Adobe Premiere and AutoCAD and Autodesk products, design products, things that are used to make airplanes, buildings, and 3D models for video games. So content creation software overlaps the video game market. JPR also follows semiconductors, mostly graphic semiconductors. Which are what the public knows as a graphics card. John likes to call it an add-in board. And then we also do workstations that are the systems that are used by engineers and scientists to do research. And we do gaming. And I'm the gaming guy. I follow all the different platforms for JPR. I like to say I follow everything from Speak and Spell to Navy aircraft carrier landing simulators. So everything from kids games to military sims. So it's not just Xbox and PlayStation. Yeah. And then a little bit of my background. I've been following the video game industry professionally for about 20 years. I run a game-focused investment management firm and launched the world's first gaming investment fund called the Electronic Entertainment Fund. I also created the world's first equity index for the video game industry, and subsequently founded and am the index provider for the Gamer ETF. So that is my background.
Right. So it seems like with everything that you're doing, you really have a vested interest in not just, kind of saying, what's better, not, letting your emotions get you into, Xbox is better than PlayStation. You take a step back and look at, NVIDIA, AMD, all the other players in the market, and you try to, suss out, who's doing something right, who's doing something wrong. Is that about right?
Yeah, precisely. We look at all the different influences on the gaming sector and how people are behaving. It's more of a challenge to forecast human behavior, consumer behavior, based upon what they're given as choices. Each type of person has different economics, and if you look at the global population of wealth, there's a certain number of people who can afford a $3,000 Alienware computer. There's a certain amount of people that can only play mobile games and do maybe $2 of microtransactions a month. But everyone loves to play games, and so what we do is we look at all the different types of people that are out there from an economic standpoint, and we also look at all the different types of people who have preferences for different platforms and genres, and put that all together to figure out which platforms are going to perform better than others and where the gaming is going to go.
Makes perfect sense. And, that must be really hard because, it's, and this is something that I've definitely noticed, more so than just, the computer side of the whole thing, but with video games, there is that human element, and a lot of it can swing very, very quickly depending on public opinion, where maybe a game development company does something that they think will be economically viable, but then it ticks off everyone in their community, and you see a massive outpour of distrust or a little bit of spite in there. I mean, it's gamers are a very fickle consumer base, and they do put themselves into camps. So I'm sure that has minimal effect on the economics of it all. But I mean, it must be fun to at least kind of see that play out in real time.
Yeah, it definitely is fun, and it does have economic effect. If for example, look at the free-to-play industry. The free-to-play industry has shown a lot of profits and promise, but if it becomes too saturated, what happens is that there'll be too many companies doing this stuff, hoping to get the same economics as the initial free-to-play companies do, and then it just becomes too saturated, and it's not sustainable for the developers. So, but there's all sorts of business models. It's really amazing. Back in, I don't know how old you are. I'm 45.
Mm-hmm.
I had an Atari 2600 as my first console, and I had a compact dual 5.5-inch floppy drive, no hard drive, as my first PC I used, and my dad brought home some games on a disc from the scientists at the lab he worked at.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I lost my train of thought. So
well, no, and the game industry has certainly developed. I mean, from that point, and it's you're talking about the different kind of models, and actually, that was a good way to transition to our first topic.
You,
go ahead.
Now I remember. So back then, we would go down to the store, and you'd buy a game for $30 or something like that, and you'd play it, and you'd either put it on your collection, or you might sell it to a friend. This was even before GameStop allowed you to sell your games back. And then it kind of moved into the buy the same model, but with a formalized repurchase option for your games at GameStop or on eBay. You could sell them. Now you've got about 10 revenue models. You've got buy physically, add on digitally with add-on content. You've got buy physically, sell with the ability to sell back physically. You've got buy digitally or physically and pay microtransactions for small items or enhancements within the games. You've got sometimes there's even a pay for resolution business model where you get a higher fidelity look if you have a 4K monitor or so and so forth for more money.
I definitely haven't noticed that one yet. You may have to point me to an instance where you have to pay for graphics quality, but I know that's one that's really up and coming, and it's you see it with things like PlayerUnknown's Battleground, with Overwatch, really with any kind of modern game. And again, it probably has to do with the economics of it all. You pay a one-time purchase, be it $20, $40, not a $60 transaction, but they hope to make, I think, that $20 up with these loot crates. The idea that you spend $100, $50, $20 on randomized assets for the game, and that's what I'm really seeing taking off lately. Have you kind of noticed that?
The loot crate thing I know is popular amongst what I kind of call the hardcore fans, your penny arcade type folks. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure it's gone really mainstream yet. But the more mainstream models that I still haven't addressed, that there's also these like Xbox Live type business models where you pay, I think it's $100 a year, and you get access to 100 games. Don't quote me on the economics here. I'm quoting myself on the radio, but anyway, that's another. It's basically renting games, renting games, and there's someone mentioned another business model that I hadn't heard of yesterday, but sorry.
You haven't mentioned, I think, season passes, which we're seeing with some of the larger shooters and things like Destiny, where you kind of purchase the game and then you can purchase like another $60 to kind of like future-proof yourself. You kind of get access to the next major content release, kind of upfront. But and if you don't pay for the next season, your game is kind of dead in the water. You kind of get left in the dust if you don't continue to re-up. It's not like the game that you spend $40 or $50 on is good after the next season. And I'm not a fan of that, but I'm seeing some of that as well.
Yeah, and then there's also in-game advertising, which is not quite. No one wants to be plastered with ads all over the place, but there's certainly creative ways that brands can sponsor games to get them in the hands of gamers for free, getting PR for their product, their name, which the economics of that could work out versus doing a television campaign or something like that. That's another potential revenue model in the game space right now on the software side.
Yeah, that would be very interesting because there are a few games, and there's obviously your yearly pretty big games, which is like your soccer games, your FIFA, your NFL games. That would obviously you go to a sporting event, advertising plastered everywhere. Same thing could definitely happen in a video game. It's just I think that takes a little bit more of an active approach to and hey, maybe that's better because you can kind of get a more modern, ad campaign into an older game. Maybe that makes sense that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you bring up Stalker. That's one of the favorite games of, it developed in the Ukraine, very, very Russian game, based in Chernobyl, Dead Zone. But that game is fantastic, and it's very similar to Fallout, and a lot of these big open world games are really amazing, where you can walk for miles in these games, and you need a lot of CPU power to play open world games, and that kind of might segue into discussion about hardware. And the gamers have been upgrading their graphics cards, but these new open world games are people really need to beef up their CPUs, and it's kind of exciting with AMD and their Ryzen CPUs and Threadripper, and Intel, of course, is always doing great stuff. But if you're a PC gamer, getting a solid CPU as the basis for your build is really important, because you can always upgrade your graphics card, but most people, once they go to a CPU, it's what they stick with. Not many people are comfortable prying out a CPU and popping in a new one. But so my advice to anyone who wants to build a gaming PC, spend your money on the motherboard and the CPU, and then you can always upgrade your graphics card, later.
Yeah, and actually, why don't we get into some of the research that you've done there? Because just personally, recently upgraded to an i7-7700K. I did have to do exactly as you said. When you buy a new motherboard and a new processor, you're essentially taking the entire computer apart and putting it all back together. So it can be daunting, but other than going to a boutique, other than buying a pre-made. Actually, I was going to ask you about kind of pre-made systems that you buy off the shelf at quote unquote Amazon or Best Buy or Walmart. Do you think the hardware that the general consumer has access to is sufficient for modern gaming, or is building your own or going to a boutique and designing your own computer still probably the best way to go if you want the most out of a hardware solution?
So first of all, the trend right now, and which is happening exactly according to our plan, as I rub my hands looking like a mad, is that the PC industry, because of the mobile space taking basic computing tasks away from because the mobile space has allowed your consumer to do basic computing tasks without a personal computer, the low-end PC market is suffering because it's just really not needed as much, and that the ultimate destiny for the PC is high-end gaming, design, scientific, engineering, and these more like serious uses of computing power. And so what's happening is that HP, Dell. Well, Dell was always there. You have to give Dell credit. They've supported Alienware for a long time. Some of the other companies are just finally realizing that they have to start branding their computers as gaming computers. So what we're seeing is more computers being branded as gaming computers because they're realizing that a massive percentage of their sales occurs because of gaming, whether it's a gaming computer or not. Listed as a gaming computer or not. You can have something with an i7 and a GTX card or a Radeon card in it and not branded as a gaming computer, and it's just stupid because you may as well brand it as such, because even your average PC buyer knows that buying a gamer computer, even if you're not a gamer, you're getting you're getting at least better performance and power. So the question that you asked is, are you better off building or building it yourself, which we call DIY, or doing a kind
pre-built, right? Yeah.
Well, there's three. We define three or four. We define four levels basically. There's the DIY, and then there's chaperoned DIY. That's what I call it. If someone can come up with a better name, great. Let me know. Chaperone DIY is where you either specify or order the components, and you go down to the mom and pop computer store or the Fry's or whatever's in your community, and you have someone build it for you. And then there's the white box market, which are these companies that your average person's never heard of, but they advertise in gamer magazines like CyberPower PC and Digital Storm. And these companies, you're allowed to specify every single component practically. You almost have unlimited, they have, when you choose your power supply, there's 30 power supplies you can choose from. And then you have your system integrated solutions like Origin PC and Alienware and HP's, I'm blanking on HP's new...
Omen, I think?
Yes, Omen. Thank you. And if you order these, I haven't every 3 or 4 months I go through an ordering process, but don't pull the trigger at the very end of the order process just to see what the experience is like and what the choices are. I haven't done it in about two months, but I'm guessing that with Alienware and with Omen and with Origin that you do get a lot of choices also with components, but you don't get as many as the white box guys. But to answer your question on where the best bang for the buck is, the best bang for the buck will always be DIY. But here's the thing. It's not, people are busy.
Yeah.
Some people are busy, especially if you're a doctor or a lawyer or someone who makes good money and you've got a family and you're busy. You don't want to sit there with an anti-static bracelet on, trying to figure out how to put this thing together. It's just, some people just don't want to do it. And you save, I don't know exactly how much you save, because if you're very creative in DIY, you can get secondhand stuff and you can find sales, but you can save anywhere from, $200 to $1,000. I think that's an acceptable range if you DIY. But that again, then you have to start collecting components. And if you're a student or if you're a young professional with not a lot of disposable income, and you like the hobby aspect of it, DIY is the way to go.
Right.
If you're busier and have more disposable income and just don't want to deal with building it, or some of and you would like to have a warranty and a phone number to call, doing business with a company like Alienware is great, because you pay a little bit extra, but there's a reason that they've been in business for so long. They take care of their customers, and all those companies that have been in business for a long time take care of their customers. So. And then there's the kind of the white box and the chaperone DIY that are in the middle. So you just figure out where you are in that spectrum of time, free time versus technical inclination versus your budget, and then you'll find the right spot.
Absolutely. And, we've had a number of these on the program before. I think in last 6 months, I know we've had Origin PC and CyberPower PC. So, I mean, they're out there. They are very helpful, but again, you do pay that little bit on top. And of course they have add-ons and things like that. So, but no, of course, Computer America, we emphasize DIY. We think everyone is smart enough to put one together. So, Mr. Ted, we have all of our, we have our hardware, we have our computer. Let's talk video games again. So, and you mentioned that you're not just about Xbox, you're not just about PlayStation, but tell me about the industry as a whole. Obviously, you sound like a real PC enthusiast. I'm a, PC kind of guy myself. I do own an Xbox. What are people playing games on? Is it, because when you kind of get sucked into your bubble, you're like, oh, everyone plays what I play and that's it. But I mean, is it the case where everyone, we're just woefully outnumbered by mobile gaming? What are the numbers?
Right. So, I mean, globally you have, it's close to 7 billion people, I think. I don't have my computer on. I'm pacing around in my loft. I like to do that during interviews. Mm-hmm. With 6 to 7 billion people on planet Earth, I think 2 billion of them play games. Now, if you just look at the pure numbers of people who have played a game on a platform, mobile is going to win, for sure.
Right.
But when you start looking at engagement, people play a game. If you look at every 100 people and how many people that have played a game on their phone, how many actually play regularly, and how many use it as a primary gaming platform. I personally don't like gaming on my phone, and it has nothing to do with me owning PCs and Xboxes and stuff. I don't like it because it sucks the battery down.
Yeah.
And I have friends on Facebook, I have family on text message and business, and I need access to my phone, texting, social media. That's more important than gaming to me on the phone. And so that's one problem, is that with the mobile space, is that gaming sucks that battery down. And now, a lot of people, especially since when Pokemon came out, when Pokemon Go came out, the sales of external battery packs skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And you'd see people walking around town with their phone with a USB cord attached to it, going to some place in their purse or their jacket with probably a 3,000 mAh battery in there. Now, those are the hardcore mobile gamers, but your average person who tries it and realizes that the game killed their battery is just like, forget it, you know. So by numbers, mobile is the largest in users, and because there's so many people, you only need a few bucks from each user on average to create billions of dollars, right? So that's the biggest. Then the PC is the next largest. There's about, you know, depending on how you define a PC gamer, because there's all sorts of ways of defining it. Some people define it by how much time you've played. Do you play regularly? So I don't agree with that. I think that if you buy a flight simulator computer for $6,000 and it's got a yoke and pedals and a wraparound display, and you're a very successful attorney and you're very busy and you have 50 hobbies, but you play that thing for 1 hour a month, that is definitely a gaming computer. Yeah. You know, and you're a gamer, right? So use model, that's the use model. I'm not a huge fan of the use model as defining a gamer or gaming sale. What we look at more is the purchase motivation. Why was something purchased, and who the person identifies with. So back to, so the platforms. So the PC, we think there's around, this isn't an exact number. Our reports had the exact number that we were estimating, but somewhere, let's just say 500 million. Right. 500 million people that are gaming on PCs. And there might be a few 100 million more if you include like solitaire or some of these super casual games that are available on the computer that someone might play once or twice a month. And then it's like, come on, you can't count that as really as a game.
But and I mean, just tell me, like, is there a lot of excitement, for investors? Because PC gaming, it may be numerous because, hey, you can purchase a $400 laptop. I have friends who purchase a $400 laptop and they game on it, and they can just scrape by the bare minimum and they can get where they're going. There are others who spend, as you've been saying, thousands upon thousands, and they do more than just scrape by with these video games. But, there's a lot of, when you develop games, a lot of work and a lot of extra resources has to go into supporting, multiple graphics cards, multiple processors, multiple levels of hardware. Are you seeing just like, maybe through investors or just general excitement in the market? Because when you go to console, you don't have those limitations. It's either an Xbox One, Xbox One S, or PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro. You only have a set amount of hardware. Which one kind of gets people more excited to, to kind of sink their money into?
That's a good question. It's a chicken and egg type thing. Like there's more users on the PC side, and you have more control over your margins on the PC side. So if you take wargaming, for example, right? World of Tanks started off as a PC game, and I believe when you bought it direct from their own store. It was a transaction with wargaming. It wasn't with Steam. It wasn't with these other sources. And I believe World of Tanks is now on mobile, on Xbox and PlayStation. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is. Yeah. And so when you own your own store, your digital storefront, you don't have to give up the margin that you pay the retailer, which can be up to 30%, 30% or 20 to 40%, somewhere in there. So to answer your question, I'm not sure why I went into that. I blanked why I went down that path, but
it just sounds like that. When you go PC, you of course have you have all these options.
I remember. Okay, yeah. So when you go PC, you have more control, right? But you also have more technical support problems. You have to make sure that it works with Windows 10. Upgrade build number 8125. Yeah,
and hey Ted, the music means we have to take a break.
The Radeon and with the GeForce and with all these different things.
Right.
So
And Ted, just real quick, we're going to take a break. Music means we're going to go to commercial. We'll be back in just a moment. Everyone, Mr. Ted Pollak with the Jon Peddie Research. We'll be right back, Computer America.
Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. We are talking to Mr. Ted Pollak with the Jon Peddie Research. And yeah, we're talking all things video games and, hardware, software market alike. And again, Ted, I'm sorry I had to cut you off there, but you were just getting into.
Remember where we are.
yeah, right. You're just getting into consoles. So yeah, please.
Yeah, so developing for the console, you have that known hardware footprint that you identified before the break, which will potentially reduce the technical support issues. But here's the thing, is that the consoles used to have different semiconductor architecture than a PC. But now the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 both have x86 architecture. Mm-hmm. And the software tools that are used to make games can now be used to create cross-platform games much easier and cheaper. In the old days, they have to build two different games almost. I mean, it would have a lot of the same assets, but they'd compile it completely differently for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Now it's very similar. So right. the notion of creating a AAA game for cross-platform is now easier and cheaper than ever. So
so
the phenomenon you're describing is actually going away. And we're moving toward a world where the developer just has to make the game, and a computer software developer, an AI, will fix the game, the tiny little things in the background that are necessary to export it to Xbox, PlayStation, and personal computer.
Which is kind of, which is kind of strange because I kind of have to hand it over to Sony's dominance in the console market. What you're saying is exactly right, where it's easier than ever to port games, but I don't know if it's the dominance of Sony or just the unwillingness for Microsoft and Sony to work together. But there are a lot of console exclusives when, and again, it can only come down to money that, Sony pays for exclusivity for the first 6 months to a year to come out only on their console.
Right, and it makes sense. It's fair. I think it's fair. It's a good competitive business model. If Sony wants to and Microsoft want to have internal studios, first of all, we can talk about exclusive licensing later, but sure. But with Halo from Microsoft and with Drake's Revenge, or I forget, Naughty Dog with
Uncharted.
Sony.
Uncharted, I think is when you're going.
Yeah, Uncharted. Of course you want an exclusive title to give you an advantage in having a person choosing a platform. It's just like having Netflix having their own series, or Apple TV having their own series that only people that have Apple TV can watch, right? So yes, that makes sense, and I think it's healthy for the industry to have those exclusive brands. And then as far as licensing, exclusive licensing for the first 6 months, hey, look, these game developers and publishers, it's not free to develop the game. It's a lot of risk. So if a platform holder comes to you and says, look, we'll give you $10 million, you know, I don't know, $3 million, $5 million, fill in the blank,
right,
dollars for an exclusive a window of sales on our platform, the publisher says, hey, that reduces our risk. Sure, why not? As long as we can get out of it and sell it to everyone in 6 months, like like you said, or a year, or 3 months, or whatever. And so, yeah, that's definitely and so the consoles, yeah, they've gone to that x86 architecture. The number of users aren't as large as the PC, but you also have less languages to support. The PC is truly global. You have less languages to support. You have less potential technical support issues.
right.
And then you have, we used to create it. I have a PC gaming hardware report that I work on with JPR, and then I also have a TV gaming hardware report. It used to be called the console gaming report. But because the world is changing, I made the command decision to change it to what's called TV gaming, because there's way more ways to play on your TV now than just consoles. And you can define a console in various ways, but it used to be just Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. Now you have things like the NVIDIA Shield, which I call a micro console. The NVIDIA Shield plays native games that have been developed specifically for it with better graphics. It's almost like a pay-for-graphics model of games that were traditionally made for either mobile with increased graphics, or were originally AAA console games. For example, I recently replayed Tomb Raider, the latest Tomb Raider. I played it in Android on my 4K television using the NVIDIA Shield, and it was fantastic. Felt like I was playing a PlayStation or an Xbox. Now, the NVIDIA Shield has a mobile processor, a hopped-up mobile processor in it, so it's not going to give you the same power as Xbox and PlayStation. But it also does other stuff. It serves as a Android TV system, so you get all the benefits of Android TV when you have an NVIDIA Shield console. Amazon Fire, their Fire TVs have gaming options in them. They're getting better. They're not advertising them a lot yet because they're not ready to go super prime time, but they are gameable devices. Apple TV is also a gameable device. They have you can hook up a SteelSeries controller to Apple TV and play games on it. There's also game streaming. Game streaming you can do with the NVIDIA Shield also. You can play, I don't mean to just focus on NVIDIA, but they're the ones that have set the bar, right, for these microcontrollers.
And I mean, Ted, I'm shocked that you haven't said anything about the Ouya yet.
The Ouya is now defunct. It was acquired.
I know.
It was acquired by another. The assets of Ouya was acquired, unless I'm mistaken, and I would be embarrassed if I am messing up the names. All these micro console guys there's a lot of them, and they're small. Some of them are small, but I think their assets were acquired by another company. And so you've got Razer, the company that makes mice and keyboards. They have a micro console that they were pushing a few years ago. They haven't killed it, but they've put it on the back burner for right now, which is understandable. Some of the mobile chipsets and the support of Google for Android gaming is strong, but not. They're a very politically savvy company. They don't want to monopolize or dominate things right now unless there's I don't know why their reasoning is for not totally going all in on Android gaming, but certainly if they did, there would be Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo would feel the effects.
So
anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and my question was, we've obviously kind of walked away from it, but going back to the idea of PlayStation and Xbox, and to a lesser extent Nintendo, obviously the cross compatibility is completely there. And I kind of wanted your opinion because, I've heard a lot of opinions from, fanboying. I've heard a lot of opinions from, it just doesn't make economic sense for Sony. But what do you feel is the, kind of chances of Xbox and PlayStation, just like on PC, it doesn't matter what PC you have, no matter where you are, if you play on the same servers, you get the same experience and you play with the same people. I think the days of Xbox and PlayStation being segregated against one another is, I feel like it's run its course. It's time to, bring down that wall. What do you think are the chances of, you getting that crossplay between Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and heck, maybe even PCs?
Well, first of all, anyone in any first-person shooter game, if you have a mouse and keyboard, you're going to dominate.
That's true.
The controller cannot even get near. In fact, this was a third-hand story, so take it as it is, but a Microsoft executive told me they did a secret test where they pitted the best console FPS gamers against mediocre PC gamers. And the mediocre PC gamers dominated the best console gamers because they have the mouse and keyboard, because they had a finer control.
I believe it, yeah.
And you can't unless you have aim assist, right? Aim assist is a little piece of software that if you move your pointer near someone, it locks onto them, which is essentially cheating. So it would never be allowed in esports, which
right.
is another subject we could talk about. That would be interesting to talk about esports for a while.
We will.
But let me just finish off. I'm almost done with the different platforms. So you have game streaming, and game streaming is where a server is processing the actual game. It's not being processed on your PC or on your console or on the NVIDIA Shield. And by the way, this is important because PlayStation's doing it, and Xbox, all the companies want to do streaming because the processing occurs in their control on their servers, and they're simply, all you're doing is pressing A on your controller, which is, let's say, fire. That little command travels to the nearest server farm, which is maybe 20 milliseconds away. The server processes the results of that, draws the game frame in about 3 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds, and sends it back to you in 20 milliseconds. And you can't even tell that there's a delay. When you press fire on your screen, it fires.
Right.
Which is amazing. And I didn't believe that I didn't believe it in that technology until I actually tried it. And it is amazing. But I also noticed that the amount of data that came through my Comcast account was massive gigabytes more because you're having all this data sent through your internet system. So at some point, the cable companies and the fiber optic companies might use their ability to make money off that and reduce the attractiveness of game streaming. But anyway, game streaming is another thing. And then there's people that connect tablets and phones to their televisions also. So anyway, that's TV gaming. And then you have location-based gaming, but we won't get into that because it's a small market.
Location-based gaming. Just a quick overview of that term, please.
Sure. Location-based gaming are arcades. And and experiences at like an amusement park. They might have a virtual reality experience or something like that. And a lot of people that think that VR has because of VR's hurdles with the consumer needing to buy good equipment. A lot of people think in the early years of VR that we're going to see that the best way to experience it is at location-based, where you go and you pay $20 to fight a Pirates of the Caribbean naval battle or something at Disneyland, and instead of building a whole VR platform for home use. So for your person who's just curious about VR, that might be a better option. But yeah, location-based gaming used to be the only gaming, right, back in the arcade days. But now it's smaller, but it's not going away, and it's still there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I grew up on. I, of course, had a PC through the 90s, and then I went to the arcade every Fun Depot every Friday with $20, and that was a lot of fun. But no, so glad to hear that's still around. let's poke this conversation forward, and let's talk a bit about revenue in the gaming industry, because we're going to segue that into esports to cap off the conversation. But revenue obviously important. When game companies do well, they put out more content, and kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. You get more out the more you put in, but they do need to earn that bottom line. And 2008, the economic recession, the first thing people cut is their is kind of their gaming budgets. I think that was when the rise to free-to-play came, when people were not willing to crack open their wallets and spend that initial money. How's it been lately? Has gaming recovered since the free-to-play epidemic?
Yeah, I think actually, if you look at, I'm not sure what data source you're using for the 2008 pullback in gaming revenue. We don't track software.
I just kind of implied that because of the whole, the entire economy hit a recession in 2008, and so, yeah.
But here's what we look at is we look at when there's hard times, people have to choose activities that have the best entertainment activities that yield the best cost per hour ratio. So if you look at a movie at the movie theater, the cost per hour ratio is, a movie is what, $14 now?
Mm-hmm.
So,
about, yeah.
Yeah, so let's say $14 for the movie plus, we won't even include drinks or popcorn, but we will include transportation costs and parking. And in that, we will average that, I'm just doing this in my head as a dart throw, with people who walk to the theaters or take the bus. But let's just add on another $2. Probably could add on 4. We could add on 4. Let's add on 4. So look at your $18. So your cost per hour is $9 per hour.
Okay.
For a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
I just recently finished playing Zelda on the Switch, and it tracks how many hours I played, and I think it was either 197 or 237 hours. But anyway, I calculated the cost of the Switch plus Zelda game, which is $360, and I divided it by the hours that I played, and the result was 37 cents an hour.
And that is not only including the game, but the console itself, which is a one-time purchase.
That's including the console. So in recessions, I have a hard time believing that gaming will suffer too bad, because I think people will go to gaming as a cheaper per-hour entertainment form. Now, if you're unemployed, though, if you've lost your job and you don't already own a device, I doubt that it's hard for me to imagine that you're going to run out and spend $300-400 on gaming. You're probably going to. We've all been there. You're worried about your, providing for everything, and you're not focused on sitting around having fun. But certainly for the people that are already on the platforms, or the people that got a severance check, or the people that have savings, and if they've lost their job, or if they're just trying to tighten up but they're not unemployed, gaming provides one of the best, if not the best, cost per hour electronic entertainment. And
very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so the global revenue for gaming, it all depends on what you define as gaming. If you define educational and training and military budgets for simulators, and things like Formula One teams spending $15-20 million on a racing sim, if you include all that plus all the hardware, you're looking at over $150 billion a year in global revenue for gaming and simulation. And the esports market is very young. It's probably around $1.5 billion in revenue. But that revenue is, when you hear these analysts quote that revenue, they're using all sorts of things except the kitchen sink. They're using tournament revenue where the people pay ticket costs. They're using an estimated factor for the increased sales of the games because of esports. So they'll say, 20% of Overwatch's sales are because of esports, so we're going to count that revenue as esports revenue. And then companies like us, like JPR that follows hardware, we look at the influence of why people buy computers. And we are seeing that based upon our observations and evidence we've collected that the esports phenomenon is creating revenue in hardware two ways. It's minting new users that are heard about esports, they're excited about it, so they build a gaming PC, and they did it because of esports. And we won't look at 100% of the dollars they put into the purchase as esports revenue, but we will assign a factor to them and a portion of their economic activity and attribute that to esports hardware revenue.
Right.
And then likewise, a lot of these esports tournaments are sponsored by Razer or Logitech or these peripheral companies or the companies that make headsets, and the gamers watch the tournaments, and there's an aspirational influence for the products that they see the pros using, so they actually will upgrade their own systems or buy stuff that they may not have bought had esports not existed, and we will also count a portion of that revenue as hardware revenue. So when you look at esports' revenue that's being quoted in the press, you should just know that it has very many components to it, including advertising too. If Coca-Cola pays the ESL, this is not a number that I know. I'm just using this as an example.
Right.
This is a hypothetical. If Coca-Cola pays the ESL $1 million to put signs up during their tournaments, that $1 million is esports revenue also.
Right.
Okay.
And I mean, none of this is kind of new, because you can take, I think, lessons learned from, sporting events and sporting arenas that, it's kind of like basketball, where, it's not just the sales of the basketball when people go on and they say, and they watch the NBA and they go, oh, wow, basketball. But it's also the sale of, the sneakers, the sunglasses, the clothing, the energy drinks, the sports drinks, there's a lot that goes into the revenue of an organization besides just that. And so I guess for PC, I guess you're very right to associate, sale of hardware and things like that. What kind of importance do you put on streaming? Because a lot of esports professionals, they're going on, they're playing these big tournaments, but then they're parlaying that exposure that they get maybe on stage, and then trying to take it into this other new evolving space, which is, putting yourself out there, kind of being a content creator in real time with live streaming. Does that factor into it at all, or is that still too new?
Absolutely. Live streaming, I never look at live streaming, but I'm 45. Talking to some of my friends who have children, and they're like, dude, that's like, our kids are always looking at that. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I don't just use my friends as as my professional survey bank, but it's when you start hearing that, it gives you pause. And so streaming is big, and in fact, it's so big that YouTube and Google have made it a priority in their YouTube strategy. Obviously, Amazon believed in it so much they acquired Twitch for a lot of money.
Yeah.
And also, not only that, but Amazon and Twitch are doing something very, very interesting, which is a new model, or new retail model, where the streamers, if you're a streamer on Twitch, the game you're streaming has a purchase link that shows up, and if people purchase it through your stream, you get 5% of the sales.
Yeah.
So now the streamers are becoming sellers of games, which is very, very interesting and cool. It makes sense,
Yeah.
Also, another thing about streaming is that you get the opportunity for people to watch their heroes and the people that they like play. Like, if we're almost into the football season now, but if a famous quarterback loves gaming and he goes on and live streams a session of some game, his fans, whether they're gamers or not, might watch it, and that might pull some of his fans who are non-gamers into being gamers.
You know,
So,
and honestly, I if you haven't noticed, I'm actually pretty big into streaming as well. I tend to consume it in my spare time. But some examples of that I've seen actually happen. One of them is for mixed martial arts, and Mr. Rampage Jackson, I believe, is his name. He plays with some famous gamers, and seeing an MMA fighter play video games is something very, very strange. And then another instance is Deadmau5, and he's a musician, electronic music, and yeah, he streams video games in his spare time as well. It is that blending of audiences.
absolutely, and it's cross marketing, and it's a positive trend to, like I like to say, mint more gamers. Creating a gamer from someone who wasn't, you can sell more stuff to current gamers, but creating a new gamer is a hard thing to do. And this streaming stuff and esports and VR are appealing to people who might not have been interested in gaming just from traditional marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So those three elements are minting new gamers. I would say the number one most important is streaming and esports. VR is it's moving along. I just did a demo, and I was very impressed with the demo. But you also have a headset on, and you're enclosed. And so I think that VR will be a super niche. It won't be a niche is like a small thing, but it's like a super niche. But it's not a mainstream, everyone sitting there on their couch, and instead of looking at their TV with their Xbox, they're looking around, with the headset on. I don't think that it's going to be that mainstream yet. Maybe someday when we get to a level where we have these mixed reality glasses that are no heavier than a pair of Oakleys, and you can go AR, or you can switch into VR mode, or you can mix it up, and everything is, you can easily leave the environment. It's wireless. We need revolutionary power sources to do that, and that ties into mobile gaming too. You want to make the next 10 billion in mobile gaming, well, what you need to focus on is creating some type of fuel cell or, micro-nuclear battery or something like that for our cell phones. You need it to get to where you press play on a video, put your phone down, go on a vacation to Europe, and come back, and the phone's still playing the video a week later. That's the type of power supplies we need for mobile and for VR to really explode and to change the world. The canary in the coal mine.
I have heard of that, carbon nanotubes, but I don't know if they'll ever make it into the market. So So that's on your sci-fi radio show. We can talk about that. But, and those things, the running joke is they can do anything but leave the lab. So with that being said, and said, we could honestly go on and on, because I really did kind of want to get into where you see the future of esports, but I think we're gonna have to leave it there. Actually, one more question to cap off the day. And I'm gonna tell everyone to go listen to this episode when this question comes up here on Computer America. Is the PC dead?
Are you kidding me? The PC is the most successful gaming platform for serious gaming in the world. There is no better platform.
90 seconds.
Because it has so many form factors. You can do desktop, you can do a laptop, you can do a laptop with an external graphics processing unit, which is now very popular. Alienware, Razer, and now HP are all making external graphics. It's where you have a desktop graphics card in an external housing.
Right.
And when you're at home, you plug your laptop into it, and you get a desktop experience on your external display.
Perfect.
But
so everyone, and Ted, we have to stop you right there. We are just out of time. So everyone, you heard it from Ted. It is not dead. So Mr. Ted Pollak, he is with the Jon Peddie Research, and he is a senior analyst. Everyone, and of course, Ted, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. Happy to have you back on. There's a lot we didn't cover.
All right. Well, take care and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. And everyone else out there in Computer America, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that. If you missed any part of it, go ahead and listen to the podcast over at computeramerica.com or iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, what have you. So, everyone, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Computer America. Tune in tomorrow as we have on Mr. Gary K himself. So, until then, everyone, have a great day. Catch you then. Bye-bye.
10 seconds.